Explain the impact of distributed generation on the power system. First we shall know what is power system. Okay, so power system means here it includes generation, transmission and distribution. So these three are important in the power system. So here, what is the impact of distributed generation on the power system performance? So first, changing taking place. What are the taking place if we insert the distributed generation? So first here, electricity generated from fossil fuel is replaced by generated from renewable energy resources of energy. So nowadays, before days, fossil fuels were used, okay, more for the consumption. Nowadays what they are doing, they are replacing with the renewable energy sources, right? So that is the first point. Electricity generated from fossil fuels is replaced by electricity generated from renewable sources of energy. Even when new thermal generators or large hydropower units are built, their location is rarely decided by what is best for the power system. So if you are installing the thermal power station, or if you are installing the hydropower plant, then it is the least and built their location is rarely decided by what is the best for the power system. So what is the best for the power system? So large generator units connected to the transmission system are replaced by a small units. So large generating units are replaced by small units connected to the distribution system. The term distributed generation and embedded generation are both are used. Here, vertically integrated utility. Vertically integrated utility, it will be split, okay, split up. So it will split is different in different countries by the typical separation is between generation, transmission and distribution. So the generation market is open to competition. So the generation assets are no longer owned by one or few owners. So for example, generation for there are many different types of generation. So that is not owned by a one company or one owner, okay. So there are so many owners. Instead, many new players also have entered the electricity market. Nowadays solar, they are in rooftop solar, okay, they are installing solar plant on the rooftop and they are supplying to the grid also. So the new players also entering the electricity market. The technology is available for domestic customers to generate their own electricity using rooftop solar panels or combined heat power unit in the basement. So the investment will not always profitable. So for example, if they have installed solar power plant, okay, it is, we cannot say always you will get the profit, okay. So but the risk is affordable, but the risk is we can install somewhat, it is useful, okay, somewhat it will be pay in the future, okay, we pay in the future. For a large part of the domestic customers, the legal and administrative barriers exist in many countries, but even these are being removed. The legal and administrative barriers exist in many countries, but even these are being removed now. Next is the impact of the changes. So if we are installing or if we are inserting the distributed generation into the grid, then what is the impact of the power system performance? So here it is difficult to get an overview of all the impact, because the generation, the network and even consumption will change. Generation will change, network will change, and the even the consumption will change. That is, you remember GNC. So when it come to the generation side, or when it generation side, now they are replacing with the renewable energy sources more, right? So now when it come to the network side, so they want to install, replace the overhead line by underground cables, overhead line by underground cables. And when it comes to the consumption side, nowadays we are using a efficient appliances, right? That means which consume less electricity, for example LED bulbs, like that. Or we can say here example of increase in consumption, that is electric heating, high speed trains. Nowadays we are using a high speed trains, instead of aeroplane we are using a high speed train, and instead of gasoline fired car we are using a electric car. So that increase in consumption, electricity consumption will increase. So electric heating, high speed electric trains, electric cars, okay, and home appliances also, and replacement of incandescent lamp by compact fluorescent lamp. This is an example of change in the network, okay. So here the most important impact of the deregulation of the electricity market is that, why the deregulation of the electricity market, deregulation of the deregulation of electricity market is becoming because there is no longer any single organization that has control over the location, production of the individual generator stations. For example, many generation stations are there, G1, G2, G3, up to GN, okay. So there is no single organization that will control overall generations and locations of the generation, right? So that is what they are saying, why the most important impact of the deregulation of the electricity market is that there is no longer any single organization that has control over the location and production of the individual generator stations. Even when we consider only the large conventional power units, their production is determined primarily by the market, okay. Even if we consider only the large conventional power units, that is large conventional power units, thermal, nuclear, like that, okay, large conventional power units, if we consider also their production, how it depends upon the consumer, right? It depends upon the market, whether it is the demand may increase, demand may decrease, and whether they are getting the fuel or not, it depends upon the market. Fuel, how much fuel cost, it depends on fuel cost also, they may increase the unit price, right? So even when we consider that even if we consider only the large conventional power units, their production is determined by primarily by the market. So here the most deregulation of the electricity market is that there is no longer any single organization that has a control over the production location of the individual generator stations. Even when we consider, okay, even when we consider that a single organization, what happens, large conventional units, their production is determined primarily by the market. The system operator is only allowed to intervene in the market. The system operator is only allowed to intervene in the market when the resulting power flow would endanger the operations security of the market. For example, without system operator, so if the production is more, okay, then that will affect to the security of the market. System operation is not allowed to intervene in the market. system operator is only allowed to intervene in the market when the resulting power flow would endanger the operational security of the market. Here the system operator is also in most cases able to change the production of large generation units when their production level would otherwise endanger the operational security of the system. We say that those units are dispatchable. Okay, so in some cases, for example, load is less. Okay, load is less. If the production is high, then that will lead to the overload, right? So in that cases it is a better to dispatchable. So load forecasting is important in this case. So the system operator is also in most cases able to change the production of large generating units when their production level would otherwise endanger the operational security of the system. We say that those units are dispatchable. Okay, those units are, we say that, dispatchable. They can be turned on or off on a demand basis. Okay, for example, demand is high, then it can be turned on. If the demand is less, then it can be turned off. Okay, so it is a dispatchable units. Those units we call it as a dispatchable. We can connect and we can disconnect. Smaller units distributed generation cannot be dispatched in this way. Smaller generated units we cannot do that. Okay, so for a particular, for that smaller generating units, so we need to consider there is no option, right? We cannot dispatch them. The system operator will simply have to accept the production whatever it is. With a renewable energy source of energy, the production is further strongly fluctuating with time and difficult to predict. This makes the planning and operation of the power system even more difficult. So with renewable source of energy, the production is further strongly fluctuating with the time and it is difficult to predict. This makes the planning and operation of the power system even more difficult. So the large conventional power stations are connected to the transmission or sub-transmission network. Large conventional power stations are connected to the transmission or sub-transmission network. These networks are designed for a power transport in both the directions. So whatever generation, high generation is there, the high generation power stations are there, that will be connected to the transmission or it will be connected directly to the sub-transmission networks. So these networks we have designed for a power transport in both the directions. It will be this network are designed for power transport in both the direction, transmission and distribution. Distribution system are however designed for power transport in only one direction. So for example, we shall say that is 3.3 kV. Okay, so it is a one is used for a commercial purpose and it can be used for transmission, and next it will be converted to distribution. Okay, it is in a both direction. If it is a only low voltage 440 voltage, then it can be sent to the only one direction, that is for the consumers. We cannot transport for the commercial purpose, that is because it is a less voltage. Distribution system are however designed for a power transport in only one direction toward the consumer. But what about the transmission? We can use it for the commercial and we can send it for the receiving station. There we can step down and it can be sent to the distribution again. Okay, this is a both direction. But in distribution, what happens? In distribution only one direction, that is to the consumer. Okay, So the large conventional power stations are connected, that is what we have discussed, right? The cost of a protection and control equipment is rather independent of the size of a generator unit. So we don't check the generator size for the protection equipment, okay? For the protection circuit breaker, we need a circuit breaker. It does not depend upon the generator size, okay? And relay, it required, it is that does not depending upon the size of the generator, it is required, okay? So the cost of a protection and control equipment is rather independent of the size of the generator unit. So here we have a deregulation of the electricity market, that you remember. Once again I repeat. So here remember, that is generation, it is replaced by renewable energy sources. Yes, you remember, generation nowadays replaced by renewable energy sources instead of fossil fuels. And next here the term distributed generation and embedded generation are both used. It is large generator units connected to the transmission system. Large generating transmission system are replaced by small units, and it is a split up, okay? Split is different. For example, now in India we split 11 kV is splitted, it is stepped up, okay? Step up, and it is again step down, okay? So the splitting is different in different countries. So the generation assets are no longer owned by one or few owners. Instead, many new players are entering the electricity market. For example, solar rooftop, okay? Solar rooftop,